Ryan, Mahyar, good to see you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. And I'm sorry I did not wear a black shirt today. I should have.
This is actually green, dark green. This is coming off as black, I guess, because
Oh,
of the light.
perfect.
But no, you're not the only one.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here. As you know, we love SMBTech, so this is one of our favorite days. And maybe we could just start off, if you guys do quick intros, a little bit about yourself, the company, and then maybe just what got you super excited to start Electric and OpenPhone. Ryan, we can start with you.
Great. Yeah. I'm Ryan Denehy, founder and CEO of Electric. We do outsourced IT for small businesses, and we deliver it as a subscription SaaS offering. This is my third venture-backed startup. In addition to being co-founder of my previous two companies, I sort of played the role of internal IT guy and realized how badly there needed to be a solution for SMBs, because basically every IT solution on the market is designed for corporate IT departments, not companies without IT departments. So here we are.
Love it.
I guess I'll go next. My name is Mahyar. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO. This is my first startup, and OpenPhone is an all-in-one business phone system for small businesses and startups. And the inspiration for doing it was really when I was at my last job. I was doing SMBTech too, actually building back office for contractors. And what we realized is that phone is very crucial in how they make money and how they communicate. And their phone is a chaotic place. They have their personal work, everything mixed up. They let money on the table by not having a solution that helps them streamline that communication. So we started looking at the market and realized we have a huge gap between something that's more consumerish like Google Voice and something that's too enterprisey and for bigger companies like RingCentral. So we are really trying to occupy that gap.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you both did start building in this space. And I guess, Ryan, for you, it's been 5 years, and Mahyar 3 years.
Yeah.
So maybe, how's the journey been? What's changed over the last 3 to 5 years? Anything that's evolved, or kind of what's brought you to driving you today toward the mission? Maybe Mahyar, we'll start with you this time.
Okay. So when we went at it first, we had the goal of being the best very small business phone system. And then after building that, we got pulled from companies that were bigger or growing startups. And it became quickly clear that even though there are a variety of solutions on the market, even bigger companies do have a need for a phone system that works very easily and their team would use on a day-to-day basis. So one of the learnings was that we need to go up market and we need to make the product better and better for anyone. That's not leaving SMB behind. Obviously, we want to be there for you when you incorporate your company and grow with you if need be. So that was one learning. And then I would say, I guess that's the biggest thing. More or less everything else has just been the things we thought are the case, and we ended up validating those things as we went on building the company.
Awesome. Ryan?
Yeah, similar story here. Fortunately, effectively every assumption we made about the market 5 years ago has turned out to be true or even truer today. So this is the first company of the three I've started where I didn't really have to pivot the business model at all. In terms of the market, I think what we've realized to be it's sort of in the more true than we ever thought category is small businesses are buying and using more software and more SaaS applications and more technology than ever, and they're not afraid to spend money. Historically, there was this old school belief that the only way you can make money selling software was selling to the enterprise. And the reality is now a lot of SMBs are spending more money on software than they were spending on office space, a year or two ago. And so that kind of purchasing power and the fact that purchasing power continues to expand, and the fact that you have sort of younger, what I would call sort of like digital native IT decision makers at these SMBs, people who grew up with the internet, who are comfortable buying software off the internet, sort of a perfect storm. I think now we're in this like very exciting kind of first major wave of SMB SaaS adoption at the scale that we're seeing it. So,
Totally, completely agree. And I'm glad that that is becoming old school. The can only sell to enterprise belief. Because I think, well, now obviously we've seen a lot of massive companies created in the SMB tech space. And I think, to your point, Ryan, like obviously people are spending more on software than they have before and more open to spending money on software, spending more on software than rent, as you say. And I think just make it a priority from day one. It's now kind of a no, of course we have to spend to get a modern SMB or a modern tech stack. Any particular trends that you've seen? I think probably you may have seen COVID accelerate or even like distributed teams work from home, but what are you seeing in terms of how SMBs what are they investing in terms of the tech stack, and what's willingness to adopt and swiftness to move?
I mean, I guess sort of following up to my last answer, it's pretty much every category. Any tool or piece of software that either enables your employees to work more efficiently or to not do things that aren't part of their core job, right? Allowing small businesses to focus on their core competencies and spend less time on the back office or on telecom or on IT or HR or whatever, right? All of those categories. I mean, I pay attention to our category, the SMB IT category, but I also look at sort of every other kind of back office tool. And I think every category is seeing the same kind of explosive growth. And it's sort of twofold. Again, for the reasons I described before, you've got, in many cases, a younger buyer, you have a greater willingness to buy, but increasingly with employee turnover, people are leaving companies that may have been using a modern tool, joining a company, and if they're not using those tools, they're saying, hey, hold on, why are we still doing this way? And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, COVID, it's sort of it's a topic that's been beaten to death, but the reality is when you put people in a distributed environment, the importance of that software as the sort of foundational glue of the company, it just goes through the roof. And anywhere where you have gaps, it becomes obvious much faster when you don't have everybody showing up to an office every day.
Makes sense. Mahyar, anything to add on that?
No, I just have to repeat a lot of the same things. I think for us, well, Ryan, you're sitting at a higher level than us. You see a much greater set of software being used. I have that lens only for the product we are building. But what I'm seeing is businesses are obviously willing to pay money as long as that saves them time or makes them look more professional. That's a trend we already talked about. Obviously, as Ryan mentioned, anyone can now bring software into the company. So now instead of needing to have a sales team that goes and knocks on the head of IT's door, you can actually just market your product and grow very quickly. I think one of the benefits of going after SMB is just a faster sales cycle. Like you can get feedback. It would be very hard to build an enterprise company. I actually think it's much easier building a SMB company because you have a much faster go-to-market. And finally, COVID obviously has been a big factor. We have a lot of customers who their team members are scattered. So having a phone system that is not tied to a desk and a phone system that helps people collaborate and be aligned is a big factor. So we put a lot of effort into bringing a lot of collaboration features into OpenPhone to allow teams to be aligned and move forward in unity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing I think is interesting that you guys both just touched on a little bit is just this idea of like, obviously the software is benefiting the small business owner, right? Because they're empowered to just do what they do best in terms of their core business and serve their customer, and not to worry about whatever piece of the function the software is helping with. And then it's also benefiting the employees because now they're used to modern experiences at work and seamless, easy to use tools, collaboration, etc. And oftentimes the end customer as well that the businesses are solving. I guess to the point around employees bringing or team members bringing software into the organization and demanding a better experience. I guess how has that changed your go-to-market, or how does that factor in to go-to-market? And I guess Mahyar also maybe just touch on your product and product roadmap, because as obviously you mentioned collaborations being built in. So just how do you incorporate all of that into go-to-market and product roadmap?
Well, it really makes your go-to-market product-led for the most part. For example, for us, building features in the product that make the experience better as you bring your team members into the workspace. has been a huge driver of growth. So a lot of our month-over-month revenue expansion is coming from, or sorry, revenue growth is coming from expansion, which happens basically by inviting more people. Um, the other aspect is you kind of as you start in the SMB and you go up market, you're gonna have to add another go-to-market motion, which is more sales assist and sales-oriented motion. So that adds a bit of challenge because now you're getting input from two separate go-to-market motions. One is a sales-driven motion and one is self-serve. But I think that's just the natural path of any company. Obviously, you always wanna. There are a ton of companies out there that feel comfortable making decisions after talking to someone. So I just feel like having only a self-serve motion is not gonna be a sufficient go-to-market. You want to have salespeople. There's actually SMBs that pay a lot of money. There are companies that are 100 people. They don't have any rapid growth in front of them, but they are definitely 25K plus ACVs that you can put a salesperson behind them. So in terms of go-to-market, we have kind of three motion. One is self-serve, sales assisted, and just a pure sales driven.
Yeah, makes sense. And maybe Ryan, obviously you can talk a little bit about electric, but you also see, maybe just talk about the SaaS marketplace and just what you see in terms of kind of overall adoption of those SaaS tools from the electric perspective.
Yeah, I mean, when I started the company in late 2016, the average customer we were working with was using 8 to 10 SaaS applications. And now the number is closer to 35, with a lot of companies using 50 to 100. And so, the core thesis of at least our business back then was, hey, companies are going to buy and use more applications. I didn't think it would go from 8 to 35.
Yeah.
With a subset of those people using 50 to 100. And, and again, these are companies that don't have IT departments. So it sort of shows, I think, this kind of like technological sort of fearlessness of sort of like the modern SMB, tech buyer, which is like, I am confident enough in the fact that software will make my business run better. And I'm just going to keep buying stuff and keep buying stuff and keep buying stuff. Now, it creates a different kind of pressure on companies like ours because you don't have a corporate IT department to assist in the rollout, because you don't have people whose only job is like change management, for example, right? Like often you're dealing with, these SMB owners or their managers. They're doing a million other things, and one of them is not to have expertise in how to deploy a SaaS application. So I think that in SMB, people get super focused on an efficient go-to-market, but what's equally as important is you have an efficient, highly effective way to take care of the customer after you sign them, because everybody wants to be driving a really efficient retention and expansion motion, and an SMB, even if these companies aren't growing 100% year over year, they're still, for most of them, very predictable annual expansion. But you got to treat the customer right in order to have an opportunity to get that.
Yeah, totally. I think that's an interesting point, actually. The SMB is actually becoming a lot larger, and growing very quickly too, right? So you're seeing a lot of good growth in that segment. I guess, to your point, Ryan, you just mentioned that that person that's buying the SMB owner may not be an IT expert, right? And that's actually what led you to start the company, right? You did not want to be an IT expert when you were a CEO. You just wanted to have something that did that better. How does that change, or how does that actually influence what you're doing on the customer education, both pre-sale, then onboarding, and customer success after sale? Like, how do you really make a customer successful, make sure they're getting the most out of the software, without having to, be an expert in that field, let's say?
It's either not complicated at all or it's super complicated, right? Depending on how you look at it. Like, at the end of the day, like, the stuff's just got to be really easy to use. It's got to be intuitive, and you've got to back it up with a team that is constantly thinking about the use of the product through the lens of the customer. That's not unique to SMB, but I do think it's more important in the SMB space than it is in the enterprise, because SMBs have a lot of options in front of them, and because there isn't a procurement department and an IT department and all these other things, they can also switch vendors way easier. the two public companies that I've worked at, if you didn't want to use whatever the tool is that they told you to use, well, guess what? The company was in a 5-year agreement with Cisco. They weren't getting out, and you were going to use WebEx and like it, right?
Yep.
But if you're an SMB and you're like, this sucks, you're just gonna ditch it and you're gonna go to something else. So I think the stakes are actually a lot higher from a sort of an enablement and an engagement standpoint, because the switching costs at the SMB level are a lot lower.
And then in Mahyar, maybe for your side, I think it would be interesting to hear anything around certainly onboarding, education, but OpenPhone, you have a ton of integrations, you have a lot of collaboration features and functionality. How do you get people to really feel the full power of the OpenPhone platform?
So as of 4 months ago, we have now a customer success function in the company, which is essentially account managers. And what they do is working with customers, understanding their needs, and helping them get set up on OpenPhone the way they want to. Obviously, the product is as simple as it can get, but at some point there are going to be setups that are not going to be intuitive, or you're willing to take the burden of making those workflows a little harder to set up because they are for the minority of your users, and then put customer success behind them until you can fix those parts of the product. So that's been our primary focus for these accounts, but also a lot of help articles and making sure we have videos around how different features in OpenPhone work. We have a YouTube channel. A lot of the common questions that people ask us are all videos on that YouTube channel. Also, that's a great marketing channel too. It's not just for education of existing users. So that's one thing. And generally, I mean, this is my experience, but customer support, not success, is one of the biggest departments at OpenPhone. We have about 25 to 30% of the company is customer support. So pretty sizable.
Yes, I think both IT and your communication system are important. So if there's an issue with them, you need people want support immediately. That makes sense. Okay, so as you guys are thinking about onboarding, customer success, support, etc., how does community factor in? And I guess actually also reaching those SMBs, in new and unique ways, especially as they are more digitally native. How does community factor in for both of you in terms of either, I guess, where you reach people or how you bring people together to foster conversations amongst SMBs? And I know, Ryan, you've got your first user conference coming up, so maybe touch on that. That's exciting. And how'd you guys decide to do it? And what are you?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think so. One of the challenges in the SMB market is you don't have the luxury of always selling into an IT person who is the decision maker for that product and is going to use it. It makes it easy. It makes it easier if that's the case. But again, for most SMBs, that person doesn't exist. It's like they're a head of HR, or they're working in finance, or they're an operations person, or they're an engineer. And so, at least for our business, what we figured out was, 70%, 80% of the people who buy our product, they're not IT people, and they tend to occupy 6 different roles in a company. And so from a community building standpoint, that presented a very obvious challenge in the sense that you build community with essentially a fragmented group of people who don't actually want to do the thing that they're offloading to you anyways. And so we had to think about community through the, in a more abstract way, which was really around the people who are choosing to buy our product are ambitious, technology forward managers and operators of small businesses. And they bought our product because they want their business to run better, and they want to prioritize on the things that matter. So when we launched our first user conference, which is next week, go to electric.ai to sign up. Really it was just around content that can sort of show SMB, managers and operators how to run their business better. So it's not really focused around any one job title. It's not really focused on our product, though there are, elements that weave in how you can leverage our product to do your function better. It took us 5 years to sort of get to the place where we were like, oh, wait, our user is lots of different types of people, and they actually don't care about IT. So what do they care about? How do we serve something up to them that matters? And so I'm glad we waited 5 years to do it, because I think a lot of people, they don't want to go to a conference. It's just a bunch of content kind of slapped together for the purposes of marketing.
Yeah. Okay. Mahyar, anything to add to that?
No, I think we are probably behind Ryan on that aspect. We have a lot of ideas about community, also community that's built around our product API and etc. But those things haven't come yet. So
Awesome. Well, I think a good theme is empowering SMBs that comes up again. And it sounds like, Ryan, that's kind of the main goal of the user conference is just really get people together to celebrate them as business owners and figure out how you can really be a thought leader and partner to them as they accelerate the business. I guess, are there things that you're hearing from customers, like things that they want? How is that shaping your product roadmap or, just really even the partnerships that you're creating in terms of maybe it's the marketplace or, just how is that changing how you guys are thinking about moving the business forward?
At least for our business, the one I think generally with SMB companies is you're far less likely to get caught in this trap where you have one customer dictating your roadmap or a small number of customers dictating your roadmap. And so I think it's a huge gift as long as you're willing to listen to the customers in aggregate. And, because what winds up happening in the SMB space is, you're able to look across hundreds, thousands of customers and get sort of statistically accurate sample sizes of like everybody's saying this, or a large percentage of our customers are saying that, right? When we first started the company, we were really focused, for example, on supporting companies that were predominantly users of Apple computers, Slack, and Google, right? And then the second we got outside of New York City and San Francisco, we were like, oh, got it. So most of the world doesn't use those things. They use Microsoft and they use, all this other stuff. And so I think, that's a sort of really obvious example of leveraging our go-to-market motion to actually inform our view on the market, in turn inform the product, and then ultimately be able to bring in a whole different set of customers into an expanded product. Now at the size we're at now, we're supporting 500 different tools and applications for our customers. So I think that the feedback we get is a lot more nuanced. But again, looking across almost 1,000 customers now, it's we're able to make sense of the data and say, okay, at a macro level, like what do people care about now versus what they didn't care about a few years ago. Mahyar, I'm guessing your business is not that different either.
No, exactly like that. We actually have a voting system. We have a board of all the feature requests and the number of votes of people. And now that we have a sales motion, that is starting to become, there is another line of feedback that can come in from customers who have a way higher ACV. So there is that battle that we need to figure out as an organization. But more or less, that's true. Like when you're building for SMB, you gotta look at that feedback from an aggregate point of view. And for us, we are a very horizontal product. A retail store can use us, a doctor's office can use us. So product prioritization becomes difficult, but just the fact that you have all this feedback gives you a lot of insight.
Yeah. I guess to that point, like kind of listening to the majority of customers, and then also balancing, what you think the future vision will be, or, what might be kind of the, let's say, super forward thinking, group of customers within your total customer base. How do you anticipate what's coming next? Or how do you guys think about like, multi-year vision for your businesses, while obviously kind of making sure that you're still hitting on what customers need today?
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, what we thought of 2 years ago and 3 years ago on what to build hasn't changed dramatically. I think if you have something in mind and you receive no signal from your customers that's valuable, that's probably not valuable. There is always going to be signal from user feedback that validates what you're working on. So we have a vision. We know where we want to take OpenPhone. And what we try to do is to really pay attention to our customers and see what they need and kind of validate beforehand on our assumptions correct. But I think one of the things about this space is that there are a ton of companies innovating in the SMB space, and there is a lot of common attributes between all these SMB products. Obviously, productivity is one of them, collaboration, and collaboration is the other aspect. So in a lot of cases, you don't have to reinvent the wheel to have like that 5-year vision for what's for the product you're working on.
Totally. Love that. Ryan, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think like intellectual honesty is something like our CFO stresses a lot of times. Like, you can have a lot of like good hunches about what you think is going to work, and when you have the pressures of being a VC backed company and sort of putting your neck on the line and making investments in things that sometimes don't work, I think like intellectual honesty is probably the most important thing. Like, look at the data and ask yourself, like, is this actually working? Like, do our customers want this? And it goes both ways. For example, with some of the things we're doing with like our marketplace, for example, we set some projections and we said, hey, we think that we can generate X amount of ARR per quarter over 12 months selling these third-party tools, and essentially with minimal effort and nominal organization behind it, we were doing 200-300% of what our projections were. That's pretty strong signal. But it goes the other way too, which is, if I rewind back to 2019, we had some really big gaps in the product. We had some gaps in the ways that we were thinking about what we were delivering. This was reflected in our churn. And I remember Jeff Richards, who led our Series B, he called me and he's like, imagine you're running a restaurant and the food you're cooking keeps killing people. Would you keep cooking the same food, right? And I think like, and it's an extreme way of phrasing it, but it makes sense because you sort of have to look at the business and go like, hey, at a certain point, like, is this thing that I'm serving up actually solving the problem, making people happy such to where they're coming back and they want more? Or if it's not, like, why are we doing it? So I think that's just, it's super important because you're going to have enough headwinds building the business anyways, that like continuing to pursue a failed strategy just in the name of like, pride or just not wanting to be wrong. Definitely in the SMB space for some of the reasons I described before around just their ability to switch faster than enterprise customers. Like, you can kill your company much faster in this space if you don't make the right decisions.
Yeah, that's fair. So follow the metrics, listen to customers. I guess maybe to end on a super positive note, what really excites you both about, like, why is now a great time to be building for SMBs, and what makes you guys super excited about the future and you and your teams and everyone you're selling to?
I guess for me, building for SMB is that perfect place where you build a consumerish product and you also get paid using a very sustainable business model. So you get the best of both worlds. Obviously, SMBs are great because when you help them, they light up. They write glowing reviews telling everyone how you've made their life easier. It's just so satisfying and gratifying to see that. The fact that the venture capital is waking up to the SMB space is great. That means I remember I had a meeting with a VC back in the early days, and he said either high ACV or consumer-like adoption, and SMB is in between. So it's a tough investment. I think it's the opposite now. So it's a very exciting time. And also, when you build for SMBs, depending on the type of product, that doesn't mean you're locked into it. A lot of companies have started going up market and building. I think MailChimp is a great example. An SMB uses it, maybe bigger companies use it. So it's a good place to start. Everyone, if they can, should start from the SMB space.
Yeah, I agree. Sort of with all that, it's like availability of capital has never been better for founders trying to start something in this space. And early stage investors get it. Wall Street gets it. Basically, everybody in between gets it. So that makes the actual act of financing the company that you want to build much easier than it was 10 years ago when I was running my first company. The barriers to entry to actually getting a company off the ground are much easier. And in the SMB space, your technical requirements for what you have to get to market are generally going to be a lot less. So you could essentially start an SMB tech company in a weekend and have a fundable company by Monday if you felt so inclined. And the customers get it, more than ever, right? Like, I think about, I couldn't have started my company 10 years ago because my customer wouldn't have understood why what I was doing was better or different, and definitely wouldn't have been willing to spend money. And as has been proven, every vertical in the market, like, customers get it and they're willing to spend money on it. So you put those three things together and it's like, why would you do anything else?
Yeah, no, I think it's the perfect storm. And obviously everyone's getting super excited. Like you said, certainly investors and customers and team members, right? You guys have also both hired awesome teams. So I think everyone's excited to build for the SMB. So Ryan, Mahyar, thank you guys both so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Super fun conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.